Can I just ask if everybody who isn't speaking can mute themselves, please, because I think we've got some background noise. Thank you.
Okay, 1.2, 1.3, that's dealing with a summary of the report. 2 is self-explanatory. The committee debates the information which we will be doing contained in the report. Item 3, introduction and background. 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4.
I think Martin has his hand up, and I think that was probably.
Sorry, Martin, I didn't see a hand there. Yeah, sorry. Okay, Martin.
Got Mike with us now as well.
Yeah, I've joined you. Technology is a wonderful thing.
Martin, yeah.
Jeff, yeah, thanks. We talked about. I mean, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Obviously, the meat of the document here is the data. So I was going to ask a little bit about the stuff that's in section 4. If you want me to wait till you get there, Jeff, I'm
yes,
happy
please, if you would, because Caris will be taking that on and do a lot of explanation behind it. Thank you, Martin. Sorry, was there somebody else? No. Okay, thank you. And 3.5, and then we come to the data in respect of complaints under 4. Caris, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as the summary has just set out, what we said was that we agreed, first of all, in setting up your work programme, that you wanted to have sight of complaints information so that you could have a look at all of that and identify whether there were any trends or any particular areas of concern emerging. And we produced some reports, but because of the way data has been collected historically in the complaints department, it wasn't really helpful to you in identifying the things that you wanted to see. So this is the first time that you're having a report which gives you some comparative data and enables you to compare the year-on-year outcome and levels of reporting. So you've got that. It's only 1 year at the moment, and so still it may take a little time before it reaches a point where you may be able to draw any firm conclusions, but certainly at least you've got something to check back on, and you can see the breakdown as it is. So I don't know, Martin, if you wanted to ask any questions on that now.
Yes, thank you, Caris, Chair. Chair, we had this conversation last year. I vividly recall it about being the data is the bare data is exactly that, the bare data. What we need to do is get underneath this a little bit more and understand issues that are arising in terms of themes and understanding what lessons are being learned as a result of it. The way the table's laid out isn't desperately helpful either, because you have to really pick through to see which things are connected to schools, for example, which things are, I mean, it's not helpfully laid out, and the tables of complaints, the categories. So let me organise my thoughts a little bit. The first table on page 4 of the bundle is the total complaints section, which says 402 compared with 334. And I'm trying to get my head around, first of all, it's trying to understand what all the different categories mean, Caris. So if you can help us talk us through that. Does discontinued and not merited mean the same thing? And does resolved by frontline is that the same as upheld? And all those kind of questions. So understanding exactly how many complaints had validity and how many didn't is helpful to understand.
Okay. So investigation discontinued will mean that for whatever reason it was considered that it didn't need to go forward. Now that could be because in discussion the complainant decided that there was a different way to approach it, or it could mean that there was sometimes complainants just go away. You know, they may have made a complaint because they're unhappy about something, but then if it's not a very high level thing, by the next day they may have changed their mind. So that covers things that disappear in that way. Not merited will have required some evaluation by an officer who says, having looked at what the complaint is about and the information provided about it, that it's not a valid complaint. It's not something that the local authority could be responsible for. So that would be not merited.
Right. Yep.
So then not upheld will mean there's been an investigation into a valid complaint, and that complaint is then not upheld.
Yep.
Resolved by Frontline is sort of the equivalent of our elected members' informal resolution process. So where the staff concerned, a complaint is made and the staff go out and talk to the complainant and they all come away and they're able to agree about it. So that means that there has been a complaint and it's being dealt with as a complaint, but it's been possible to resolve it on an informal basis. And then
so I was just going to say, so that's there's potentially those can be either some validity in the complaint or not. They may or may not be doing, and it's hard to tell. Is that the kind of summary?
Right. If it's resolved by Frontline, it means that there was some validity in the complaint, in that it was something that could form the basis of a complaint.
Okay.
But once staff went out and had a conversation about it, the complainant felt satisfied that they had an out.
Yeah, yeah.
And then service not provided by the local authority. We do get quite a number of complaints from people who want to complain about things, and everything's the local authority's fault, so they complain to us when it's not our responsibility at all.
Yeah.
And then obviously the withdrawn is self-evident. So
can I just, Carys, do you mind if I just come in on the no responsive outcome from manager or departments? What is happening with that is not saying that the complaints are not being dealt with. There's a lack of communication between the department and the complaints department. I know Gaynor has been doing some sort of corporate training. I know she's done it within social services area, and she is looking at it corporately about going to departments and having a sort of an awareness training with them so they know the importance of liaising back with the complaints. So that is being dealt with. It's not the saying that the complaint isn't being dealt with, it more that it is. But it's just that service heads are not getting back to Gaynor on an update, and she is looking at that on awareness training.
Okay, thanks, Cara.
Okay.
Before I bring Mike in, can I just say possibly we could have a little key to each of these items so that as they come up, we're reminded each time what they are actually meaning?
I will say that the reason they are in this layout is because this is the data that goes to the Ombudsman. This is the exact way it goes. So Gaynor is doing this, so you can see exactly what is being sent to the Ombudsman as well. So that's why this is the format. It isn't that we just designed this. We are having it in line with what the Ombudsman received.
Okay. Mike.
Okay. Sorry, Jeff, you more or less covered the point I was going to make, because this issue is going to come back again in the future, I would imagine, with people unsure of what the terms mean. So I was just going to say, maybe as you would with the glossary, a page explaining each thing briefly. So I think that would kind of answer a lot of the queries or future queries of future meetings.
thank you.
I mean, I appreciate this in that format for the Ombudsman, but is there any problem in actually just doing that little key just for this committee?
Not at all. Not at all. Between Karen and I, we'll have a word with Gaynor Lewis and just say perhaps just a paragraph which explains what each one of those terms is. You can have that and keep that as a cross-reference when you're reading the report.
I'm just thinking, because with the item on the agenda further on, I mean, there are going to be certainly 3 members stepping down from this committee eventually. So it would be good for new members coming in anyway. Ian.
Yeah, the issue about not upheld, I presume those that are not upheld are given the opportunity to take it up the stages of the complaints procedure and have chosen not to.
Yeah, the complaints procedure is a staged process. So if if somebody is dissatisfied with the outcome at the first stage, they can escalate it to the next stage. So unless Karen tells me differently, I am assuming that not upheld means the complaint process is concluded and the complaint has not been upheld.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, have we dealt with all of that? Any other questions on the actual stats? No.
To go back to the fact that you're really only comparing 2 years at the moment, but it has of course been impacted by COVID. So there are some things which are more likely to happen during a COVID situation, and the obvious one is the antisocial behaviour right at the top, just after animal welfare. During COVID lockdown, I think there were a lot of people who were complaining about antisocial behaviour. I don't know how that will impact now as we move forward. Hopefully that will reduce, but yeah, it's just one of those.
I did meet Gaynor on the details, to be honest, and there was a 20% increase from last year to this year, but it was very much because of COVID. She said there was nothing, a lot were sort of, people with their bins and, like I said, antisocial behaviour in that way, but there was nothing that stood out outside of the ordinary.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Oh.
Okay, so are we happy if we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which you all should have had in the post, the overview report of the Standards Committee 2019-2021. If I just take it a page at a time, if anybody wants to, raise their hand, please do so. If I deal with page 1, the forward. Are we happy with that? Somebody's not got mute on. Okay, are we happy with that? No questions? No, thank you. Structures and membership, fairly self-evident. On it's an item on the agenda, so we'll come to that with the service, etc. Terms of reference is the standard terms of reference. Any question, Martin?
Yeah, just on structure and membership. At the bottom of the table, the table which shows all the members, you're absolutely right to note the very sad news about Helen's demise, but there's a little bit of inconsistency because it says that she died in October, yet we're still a member into November, the line directly above.
Oh, yeah.
So one of those just needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
It's accurate.
Good point. Thank you.
I'll change it to October because Helen died, passed away in October. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, thank you. Moving on, we've passed terms of reference. The committee 19-21. Any comments on the first page? No. Any comments on the second page headed by complaints and compliments system? On the last page, which is paragraph 6.1 is guys, thank you very much. Martin.
Sorry, just Jeff. Sorry, somebody's listening. On 6.1, it says no training to be arranged due to social distancing. Obviously, that doesn't cover the entire period of the couple of years of the report. And I just wonder whether that's a good enough reason, because obviously lots of people are now doing online training, etc. I recognise the thing about we will move as soon as possible, but I think it's a little bit of a, if we could have, we probably could have arranged stuff online. We've all lived our lives online in the last 8 months, so we just make sure that we just don't blame COVID for everything. We could have done it, couldn't we?
Are you suggesting that we actually change that paragraph?
Possibly it says partly due to COVID, because you don't have to be in the same room to do training. I've spent this morning doing a housing training course online. It's perfectly reasonable to do this stuff online now, isn't it? Okay. I don't know how you want to pick that up though. I'll leave it for you, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much indeed. Okay, Claire. Right, thank you. That's the overview report. We now come to item 5 on the agenda, members' terms of office. I raised this. Caris, I don't know if you want to take this forward, please.
Yes, of course. And I wonder, Chair, if we could just take 5 and 6 together,
Sure, yes.
because the position is that we do have 3 members, that's Jeff, Ian and Mike, who will need to step down. We have a little bit of leeway because I think it's being accepted across Wales that because they were all meetings were put on hold because of COVID before everybody got to grips with the whole idea of remote meetings. We have a little bit of leeway to extend your tenure to allow for the fact that there was a period where you couldn't act as members of the Standards Committee. So what we're proposing to do with that is to agree amongst us how we're going to proceed to try and recruit some new members, so that we don't end up in a situation where those 3 members, who have obviously become really experienced members for us, have to go, and then there's no sort of overlap, and then we have new people coming in who won't have had the chance to have any discussion. So what I'm going to suggest is that Karen and I will put our heads together and come up with a process for recruitment of new members, which we will put to you at our next meeting. If you agree that, we'll agree a process of interview to go on after our next meeting, and then when our one after next meeting, so I'm imagining about January, when that meeting happens, that will be a last meeting for Jeff, Ian and Mike. And at that point, we will have conducted interviews. We'll have a discussion about who's involved in the interviews. Jeff and I have had a little chat about that in the pre-meeting. We can agree all through the meeting. And then by the time we come to our January meeting, we will be saying goodbye to the people who are going. And then we'll be hopefully in a position to introduce new people either at that meeting or shortly afterwards. So does anybody have any questions or issues with regard to that as a way forward?
Yeah, I think that's ideal, Caris, and that was my concern, that with the imminent departure of 3 of us, nothing would be in place for interview process or anything else. Julian, you wanted to ask a question?
Thank you, Jeff. It was a simple question, really. It was sad to see Jeff going as a valued member of the committee, but if he's leaving, how do we elect a chair, Caris? Is it amongst ourselves, or is it someone else who elects them, or who?
Yeah, that's one of the issues that Jeff raised earlier, and why we are hoping to have a situation where we are almost an overlap. But one of the things that Jeff was talking about was whether anybody wanted either to put someone forward as a prospective chair, or whether somebody wanted to volunteer as a prospective chair. What I was saying about that was, I think it might be helpful for us to see what sort of candidates we have for becoming new members of the committee, because you may have people, I mean, as Jeff came to us as somebody who was an experienced committee chair, you may find that you have somebody like that amongst our new candidates. But what you would do is then at your meeting, probably in January, you will elect a new chair and a new vice chair, because Ian has been vice chair. So you will have time to think about it, because that's one of the things we'll have on the agenda in October, is to get you a proper plan. And I'm also conscious, as always happens in these situations, that our elected members will face the potential to be re-elected or otherwise very shortly after that. So we will have a fairly rapid turnover, or even those of you who are re-elected, you may decide that Standards Committee is not the thing that you want to do going forward. So I think if we can sort out for January, so that we know the co-opted members and lay members, and then we'll have a look in May as to who is going to be still here as elected members and whether those elected members will still want to continue.
Okay, thank you. All happy with that? No questions? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're on item 7 on the agenda, training.
Yes, so just to take the point that Martin made just now, yes, it is of course possible to have remote access training, and that is definitely something that we'll be looking at. But the difficulty with offering training is that it's not something that's out there a great deal, training that's for standards committees. So it's not a question just of being able to access it remotely. It's a question of there being training available to access. And towards the end of 2019, having been a committee that was very keen to access any training that you could, we hit a situation where there wasn't really very much available. So we started to talk at that point about things that we might do in-house. You would all been very keen, I know, to have joint training with RCT, and also where we had the standards conference where you could do some networking and meet with standards committees from other local authorities. So that's the gold standard. That's what we want to do realistically, is have shared training with others so that you can all see exactly how everybody else is doing the job as well, and they can see how you're doing it, and we can all benefit from that shared experience. So that was what stopped. It wasn't just the thing about people being present in person, that really did shelve with all of the enormity of trying to keep local authorities functioning at all, really from the beginning of 2020. So where we are now is, you will recall when we had a discussion at the previous meeting about the former leader needing to have training in the code of conduct when he returns. And I mentioned that what I'm going to do is offer training to all elected members, probably before the end of this year, because we need everybody to be reminded of the code of conduct before we go into the, I'm sure, very well managed circumspect process that will be the lead up to the election. So I will be offering that towards the end of this year. And when I mentioned that last time, I know you as a committee were quite keen to come along to that in the capacity as the standards committee. It sort of raises your profile, but it also helps you to know what it is that members are supposed to be aware of. So I'm just in the process of trying to work out when we're going to offer that. But it should be within the sort of early autumn time. So we'll let you know, and then you will all be invited to that. So that would be your next bit of substantive training. And then after that, we'll put the inquiries out to see, first of all, if any neighbouring authorities are offering any training. There's the Local Government and Elections Act, which I think there's probably some issues in there that you might want to see. So if we can find anywhere where there's some joint training going on that we can see if we can get you into, and also if there is going to be the reinstatement of the annual conference, I'll let you know about that as well, and we'll see if we can work out how many can be invited to that and how that's going to be run, whether it will be virtual or whether it will be a direct access thing.
Okay.
So that's the position about training at the moment.
Okay, the potential training on code of conduct, Caris, would that be virtual?
I'm thinking it's likely to be virtual, and that's something we're going to come on to in a minute because of something else that we discussed earlier, Jeff. But I don't know. I mean, as things open up, if this building does open up, it may be that training of that nature is better delivered actually in the flesh, because people are more inclined to engage and to ask questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll keep that in mind as to whether it's something that we will do virtually or whether it's something that we'll have people in for.
Okay, my other question was, or my idea was, I found invaluable where we could sit in on RCT's actual case of a disciplinary. I found that much more beneficial than the course that we'd actually paid for.
Right.
So if there's any way of doing that where
Yeah.
we know something's coming up and we can be
Absolutely.
potentially linked into that, that would be invaluable.
Absolutely. And interestingly, you yourselves dealt with the case, didn't you, last year? It just came at the wrong time for us to be able to say to anybody in a neighbouring authority, did they want to come and listen to that? I think there was some discussion about it, but as far as I recall, I don't think anybody did come from a neighbouring authority and listen. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind, and we can make some inquiries, Karen, and I can have a chat about that and just see if any of the nearby authorities have got any cases coming up, and we can see if you can go and observe those.
Okay, thank you. Everyone happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're on item 8 on the agenda, whistleblowing complaints. So verbal update from Caris.
Yeah, so this is on for a verbal update. It's not actually scheduled in your work programme until March of next year. But I wanted just to fill in a gap because I don't think we had the meeting that would have considered it last year. I think that was the one that got cancelled. So it was just to say that we haven't had any whistleblowing complaints during that period. Now, one of the things when I say that is you can see that as great news because it means nobody has felt the need to blow the whistle about anything, or you can see it as meaning that maybe people either aren't aware of the process or don't feel empowered to use the process. So we have sent out a few months ago, the Chief Exec sent out an all staff email reminding them of the process and reminding them of how they could go about making a whistleblowing complaint if they needed to. But I just wanted to let you know you haven't missed any data as a result of not having that report. There simply weren't any of those complaints made. And then we'll just go back into our routine and we'll have it back on the agenda for our meeting, which is likely to be probably April now of next year, and we'll see whether there's anything for you to consider at that point.
Is the reminder from the Chief Exec an annual one or?
No, it's not annual. It was because partly of a discussion that I'd had with you here, where in telling you that we really have quite a low level of these, I was concerned that that might have meant that there were people who didn't know about the process.
Yeah.
And the previous Chief Exec had sent out a similar email, 3 or 4 years earlier. And when I looked back at it and realised that it was 3 or 4 years ago, I agreed with the current Chief Exec that we needed to do it again. So yes, that's why we did it. And I can have a discussion with him about whether that's something we do need to do more frequently or maybe in a different format, just to make sure all staff are fully aware.
I think so, because personally, I don't know how the committee feel, but I think it should be more in the staff's interest that it is available to them on a regular basis, even if it's only once a year. I don't know how anybody else feels, rather than just a one-off.
It's something that was used quite a lot in the health board. You know, it was very useful for people coming forward with issues that they couldn't take to their manager.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question that's related? And you may tell me I can't ask this question, but I've been looking through the council's agenda, the full council's agenda, regarding the covert surveillance report. Can I just ask whether that covert surveillance is undertaken on staff or on members of the public that may be breaching their tenancy rules or things like that?
Actually, you probably can't ask that question because it's not related to what we're talking about at all. But what I will tell you is that there have been no covert surveillance. There has been no covert surveillance carried out in the period of the last report. So you have to obtain permission in order to do that. So there would have to be a valid reason to carry out such surveillance. That would be a matter for the Chief Executive and my Deputy Monitoring Officer to some extent as to whether there were a valid reason for it. But any more inquiry about that, I think we'd have to take somewhere else because it's not appropriate to have it in here.
No, I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, if nothing else, we are actually flying down to item 5. Date of next meeting.
Yes, so we need to make a date for a next meeting, and I'm suggesting around about October, because I think everybody will. It's all very difficult. Sort of August, everybody takes their time off. September, everybody's getting back. So I think if we look at October, the issue that we were then discussing was whether we would get back to face-to-face. Now, there is some very clear guidelines coming out. Well, I hesitate to say clear guidelines, but there is a clear steer that both central government and Welsh government would like to maintain remote meetings to some extent. And that's all about accessibility, because they believe that there's more chance of people accessing meetings if they do so remotely than if they physically have to attend a building. I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that we'd all agree with. I think sometimes people make the effort because they know that they have to go somewhere. But at the moment, the building is still shut, but we are actively looking at dates for reopening and ways in which we would reopen. So what might be the best way to deal with this is to agree a date for a next meeting, say that it's likely to be a remote meeting, but that we will consider, if the building is open, we'll write out to you all and see if you would be prepared to come in, if you are able to have access. We could also have a hybrid version where some people come in and other people are remote, so it doesn't have to be the same size fits all. But I think that's probably going to be the best way to deal with it, because at this point we're not certain as to how open the building will be by the time of our next meeting, and then we could just keep it under review each meeting that we have from then on. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yes, I'm on a couple of organisations and they've started face-to-face with social distancing, but not necessarily in their own buildings.
Yeah.
There's a church hall somewhere, or do you know what I mean? So we could theoretically have it off-site as long as we were socially distanced, if it's still in at that time. Just something to consider, Karen.
Yeah, I think the point for this meeting, with the number of people on this committee, you could definitely socially distance in the council chamber. That would
totally.
It's just a question of, first of all, whether the building is open for those kind of purposes, and then secondly, whether everybody wants to do it or doesn't want to do it. So if we just leave it on that basis, as long as everybody's happy, then we'll just let you know and take everybody's views nearer the time.
Do you want a date note at this stage?
Well, yes, if we could. I think that's what we usually do.
We're going to have the Ombudsman report, and we said that we were going to have the 2 years. When does that come out? Maybe we need to be mindful when that's due out, because that will be scheduled for the meeting.
It is normally in October, which would suggest that maybe we need to be towards the end of October.
I was going to suggest that, yes. I was going to suggest that with the lockdown situation anyway, that we leave it as late as possible, where hopefully restrictions might have eased.
Yes. So as it happens, the 29th of October is a Friday.
That's half-term week, I'm afraid, Caris. I'd love
right.
to, if at all possible.
So would it be better to go the next week then? Friday the 5th?
Bonfire night.
Bonfire night. And we can all have our little meeting, and then you can all go off and have your firework party.
Yeah.
Same time, 2 o'clock.
So have we agreed on the 5th, 2 o'clock? Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Date then, 5th of November, 2 o'clock. Thank you very much. 5 November, 2 p.m. Item 10, I've got nothing to bring forward. I've had a discussion with Caris beforehand. It's all come out in the meeting. I'd just like to thank you all for your attendance and just continue to stay safe. And nice to see you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Meeting closed.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Carlos.